Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer, coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. Hello, podcast world, fellow plant lovers, horticulturists, gardeners, and just anyone that likes plants, I suppose. Welcome back to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast. This is episode 5. 5 episodes in. Feel like we're doing good. Would like to see a few more listeners pop up on the old Buzzsprout, but I'm happy overall. So I'm Matt Guthrie, joined with Tim Fleischer over here to my left or across from me. So Tim, what's been going on in your world this past week?
So let me think here. If we're talking garden related, my beard tongue brings all the gals to the yard because that stuff's popping off.
Mine's not flowering quite yet at my house.
Oh my gosh, mine's just starting to flower. I believe it's not Husker Red. It's one of the ones with the pink blooms and the purple foliage, but it's just beautiful. Adds a really nice contrast to the garden foliage wise, and the blooms are delicate and a little fuzzy, and it's a native. It's a native R, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
But everywhere I see it right now, it's really starting to come into its own, and love that plant. So really noticing it out there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all you got going on in your garden then?
I mean, there's
your beard tongue bringing the girls
to the yard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been visited by a lot of gals because of my beard tongue.
Mm-hmm. I believe it too.
So.
And here I am visiting you.
Yeah.
Here I thought it was for your mustache, but no, I guess it's your beard.
My beard tongue. So how about you, Matt?
What's been going on in my world? Busy. Working, planting, doing a little landscaping work for the neighbors, getting some. They're trying to do an all native kind of, I don't know what you would want to call it, understory type planting in their backyard. They're very like naturalistic. So I've been kind of working with them on that some this past week. Gardens are looking good at my house. The Salvia Caradona is just popping off right now, looking good. It's got all the pollinators visiting it.
Salvia is bright right now.
Yeah, it's just, man, the rain that we've had has been amazing for it, and all of this heat, because it is damn hot out.
It's hot.
It was like 90 degrees yesterday. Today it's going to be like 90 and sunny tomorrow,
and then maybe a little relief come Wednesday with some rain and some storms and a little cold front.
Yep.
Cool front.
Little low pressure cool front, if you will. So, but yeah, it's been hot. It's been dry the past few days, which is going to bring us to our topic today. Chlorophyll Climax, the quest for adequately wetting your plants. A podcast all about watering. Proper watering.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's why you said it.
That's why I said it. So, yeah, Tim, you want to start us off on the watering? I know you were pretty hype about this podcast episode. And I think it's a great one because we've done a lot of plant talk, which is always fun, but just as important as the plants that you pick out to put into your garden is properly maintaining them after planting them. And I mean, there's two things that they need, right? Water and sunlight to live. So we're going to dive into this watering topic. That way, hopefully set everybody up for success with watering and
absolutely
in their gardens. So.
And nutrients too, but that's another topic for another day. I think I've been wanting to do a watering topic for a while because I think it's very important. I think there are a lot of misnomers out there about what good watering practices, and I think that it's so easy to be making a mistake with your watering perpetually, which is not helping your plants. And so I had some feedback from some people close to me that this would be a boring topic, so we're going to try to make it super exciting.
Yeah.
Super wet.
Yeah, very wet. As exciting as watering can be.
But it's important. And I think if it, like Matt said, if you want to be successful, then you need to be, using good water techniques. So we'll start off with the 3 main things you need to water during the dry season, which here in Central Ohio, I don't know that we have a defined dry season like some places in the world. We're still very fortunate that we don't have Dust Bowl type conditions, but come mid-June through the end of August, it's pretty dry around here, and we might get a stray shower here and there that just dumps a boatload of rain, but it's not an adequate watering for your plants. So
just enough to wet the whistle.
And
yeah.
But that's not enough for the plants.
Nope.
Just the whistle.
Yep.
So 3 main things that we're talking about watering during this time period are your veggie garden. If you're growing vegetables, they are the type of thing that's going to need watering throughout the season. Number 2 would be newly planted trees, shrubs, perennials, and annuals in the ground. So anything that you've planted this spring into early summer is going to need to be watered throughout this whole summer. It just is until it's established. And when I say established, is what I mean is specifically with the tree, shrubs, and perennials, they've rooted into the ground, and they're going to be able to in the future find what little water's there. But right now, before they're rooted in, they need some help. And then the third thing that it needs water this time of year are containers, hanging baskets, pots, things like that. And those need water a lot. Those more so than the first 2 things, sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times a day, depending on where your container is.
And what the plant is in the container.
Correct. Yeah. So those are the 3 main things we're watering this year. And it's important to keep in mind that if you have established perennial and shrub gardens and trees in your yard, they don't need water in these droughty times. Maybe to just liven them up a little, but as far as getting them to establish and not die, we're not talking about watering stuff that's been there for years. That stuff's good to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Yeah, I definitely, just to kind of liven things up, I typically don't even do that, probably because I'm lazy, and when it's hotter than hell out, I don't really want to be outside doing any extra work. But yeah, I mean, just setting a sprinkler on stuff, even if it's just for a little bit, like in July or August when it's been hot, dry, you're in a drought, like definitely livens things up some.
Yeah.
Established plants.
Yeah, we like to set up a sprinkler every couple of weeks and just let it run for like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll move it and let it run for another hour, and then just keep moving it till all parts of the garden get hit. But today we're really focusing in on the things that you really need to be aware of when you're out there with your hose or your sprinkler or any other type of watering method that you're using. You need to be taking care of this veggie garden and your newly planted plants and your containers and baskets.
Yeah.
So,
yep, very important stuff there. So yeah, we'll just keep going with this.
Well, and a listener might be thinking, well, I have irrigation in my bed, so what's the problem? Do you want to talk at all about irrigation in the border, in the beds? I'm not talking about in the turf grass, in your lawn. I'm talking about in your beds.
So irrigation in your beds, would this be like on established stuff or newly planted stuff?
Right, it's irrigate. What I'm saying is irrigation that's just going to run on anything and everything.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially like the irrigation on established perennials, trees, shrubs, things like that may be like in the landscaping around your house. On the newly planted stuff, if you have irrigation and that's your only method of watering, then sure, by all means, whatever you've got to do to get the water to the plants. But, generally speaking, when I want to water newly planted stuff, whether that be, veggies or trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, I'm really wanting to use a hose and water that stuff in by hand, right at the plant, the base of the plant, the soil right around the plant, and really give it an adequate amount of water.
Because, an irrigation system's an investment. It's an investment, and it uses a lot of water when you've got it set to run daily, right?
Yeah, it really does.
So if you're building a new home or thinking about installing an irrigation system in your flower beds, I guess we're here to tell you just to think about that before you do that, because every plant that's going to be in that garden is going to have different water needs. But if you've just got pop-up irrigation spraying water around, every plant in that garden is getting the same amount of water. But that's not good for the plants.
Some plants thrive in that hot, dry soil. And then there's definitely plants that will just take on as much water as you can give them.
Right. You mentioned that salvia that's in bloom everywhere. That stuff, once it's established, let it be as dry as possible.
Yeah, salvias, some of the alliums, a lot of the native prairie type plants are that way. There's definitely some that would require more water. Maybe stuff that you would find like in a lower area of a prairie, or if you're planting like sedges in the garden, maybe those are going to require more water than, say, the echinacea that you have, or the little blue stem grass that you have, or the salvia that you've got planted. Two completely different watering needs there. So that, for sure, one reason why the irrigation's not always the best idea.
Yeah, so long story short, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation when it comes to watering your flower beds and your perennial border and things. So doing things by hand, while more time-consuming, is definitely going to be better for your plants.
Yeah, for the health of the plants.
Yeah.
And just to touch real quick, you had mentioned irrigation on the lawn, and time and time again, you get people that are like, oh, I've got my grass is irrigated, and I can just turn those nozzles to hit the flower beds, and the turf that you're growing, the grass that you're growing in your yard, the watering needs for it are even more so different than the watering needs for a tree, a shrub, a perennial, or an annual. Grass needs, I think they say, an inch of water over the course of a week to stay green and healthy. Perennials, things like that, the watering needs are completely different. So, don't think that your lawn irrigation can be the fix-all for the irrigation also in your flower beds, because that's just not the case.
Yeah, and since you're talking about quantities, I think it's important to just delve into that a little bit more, because I think one of the misnomers that I referenced earlier is that, well, it rained a little today, so I don't need to water my containers or my newly planted perennials or my vegetable garden. But what kind of rain was it? Was it a quality rain? Because a quick hard rain isn't soaking into the ground. It's hitting your dry ground and running right off.
Yep.
So you have to think about what kind of rain it was. So people tend to love summer. Like, I love it. It's hot. It's sunny. I want long soaking rain. That's all I hope for all summer, and I know you do too.
Oh.
We're watching the weather like, oh, rain all day, please, just like this, nice and steady all day, because I just think of the benefit it's providing for the plants, and also the amount of work I'm not going to have to do to get those plants wet. And so I'm thinking like 3/4 of an inch over the span of a couple hours or a day is kind of adequate, where if we get that, then you're kind of like, I don't have to do any supplemental watering this time around. Would that kind of be accurate?
I would say so. Yeah, I don't think it has to be like some big 1-inch downpour or, anything like that. A half to 3/4 of an inch, if it's soaking in over the course of a few hours, I think would be a good soaking rain for the plants. Like you said, a 3/4 inch rain over the course of 20 minutes is a different story. But then also, in the same note, quality water, if you we're only getting 1/10 of an inch, sure, maybe there's puddles in your driveway, but, that's not doing much for the plants. 1/10 of an inch, you're getting the mulch. Maybe the mulch, if you got some mulch in your bed, you're getting that a little.
Yeah, next time you get 1/10 of an inch, just take your hand and dig down a little bit and see how moist it is at root level.
Yeah. That 1/10 of an inch ain't going to get it very moist.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So I mean, water in the rain sometimes if you have to, if it's not a hard rain sometimes.
Yes. And
fun of it.
Speaking of rain, we were talking about irrigation, cost of irrigation. So maybe you're wanting to save a little bit of money. Rain's free. Build like a rain barrel, that collects water off of your roof on the gutter or something, and use that for watering. The rainwater's the best water. You don't have to worry about all of the crazy stuff in it like you might get out of your faucet or the spigot on the side of your house. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Water with whatever water you have, but if you can collect rainwater, that is the optimal type of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
That your plants are going to want for growth.
Yeah, I would say so. And we can keep going on with this rain thing. So one of the tools that I learned about, I'm kind of a weather nerd, so
big time weather nerd.
Yeah, big time weather nerd. So maybe about a year ago or something, I was looking into like a personal weather station to put at my house, to monitor stuff like closer, like in a very specific area being my home. I stumbled across weather stations that run on, it's called the All Weather Network, AWN, and you can download the app, and we use it. I turn it on to we use it all the time, and it's a free app. You can download it on your phone, pulls up a map, and you can zoom in, and it's crazy how many people are using these weather stations, like across the United States. You can zoom right into pretty specific areas and see exactly how much rain you've gotten in a rain event or the course of a day or the week, the month, everything. It charts it all out for you. So we use other people's data, to kind of figure out how much rain we're getting. Like at our job, one side of the city maybe only got 1/10 of an inch, whereas the other side maybe got 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. We've seen that in situations, and we would never know that if it wasn't for, using that app and really relying on some of that data. So,
yeah. So Matt saying he's a weather nerd's an understatement. Matt has a micro warm front in his pants. Don't you?
I do.
Sometimes it's cold, but usually it's warm. But I check this app neurotically during weather events. There's someone in my neighborhood that has one, so I think that gives me a pretty accurate rainfall total.
100%.
And I used to use a rain gauge, and rain gauges are great, but if you are someone who can download an app and look at an app, this is faster and it's much more accurate than a rain gauge.
I'm sure that you wake up in the morning and open that app to see I do have the water today.
I do. Because, how I get about watering.
You get a little weird.
Especially when it comes to containers. Because the way they dry out. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Containers dry out so fast. And it's, they're exposed more to the elements. There's a limited amount of soil that can hold moisture. The soils typically in containers are coarser. They've got additives in them to help water drain. And we can get into that a little bit too, like how too much water is a bad thing for a plant. So your container soils and your potting soils and things, they drain off quicker. So, inherently they're going to dry out much quicker than something that would be planted in the ground that has more holding capacity for water. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the ground, there's kind of water you can't see. The plants can find it, but you can't see it. But in a container, it's pretty finite. When that last drop of water is gone, it's gone. And containers, if they dry out and the plants get crispy, that's it. There's no coming back from that. So since we're mentioning containers, a good watering practice to get container plants adequately moist is watering them, letting the water run through, and then revisiting them. So maybe going on and watering something else, and then coming back to them and hitting them again. And you might repeat this process several times. And the reason being is potting soil is hydrophobic. Once it's wet, it holds the water very well, but it's hard to get it wet. That peat moss, it's hard to.
I've never had that problem
with yourself.
Just getting it wet.
Okay, I figured. All right. Yeah, you got me off track here. Micro warm front in your pants. So, yeah. So just because the water runs through the bottom doesn't mean you've saturated that soil, right? It just means that you've put water down the sides of that planter. So coming back and hitting it again and again and just like gradually dosing it with water.
Yeah.
Can get it really well saturated.
Yeah, because sometimes when stuff dries out, you can look at a pot and you can actually see the gap between we'll call it the root ball or the soil mass in the pot and the side of the pot. And
yeah,
you hit that with water, the water
runs through really quickly.
I've seen it so much as to speed up the process, I've taken them sometimes and set them in a container of water and allowed that plant to kind of
watering from the bottom.
Bottom
wicking up through the bottom.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of times people will do that with house plants.
Or in the greenhouse, you might have flood benches where you just flood the bench and the water just gradually soaks up through the bottom of the pots.
Yeah. So I've done that before on stuff that's really wet. I'll just pick it up, set it in a bucket of water for a half hour, 45 minutes, and then come back to it. And it's rehydrated at that point. And then I try to do a better job of keeping up with the watering at that point.
And that said, always drainage holes. Always drainage holes in your planters. If you have planters that don't have drainage holes, either put drainage holes in them or get new planters. You have to have, if they don't come with drainage holes, then they're not planters. They're just buckets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just plant succulents and never water them.
Yeah, or they're for succulents.
Or like a cactus or something. Yeah, drainage holes for sure. Yep, good point. So what else we got here? Means of watering. So a lot of different ways you can provide the water to your plants. We'll go over those. A few of them would be sprinklers. Like we talked about.
I'm a sprinkler guy.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, sprinklers are good. Maybe you have a mass planting of annuals, so all of that stuff's going to require the same amount of water. Sprinkler would be, a good option there. You can kind of set it down there and forget about it for a while and come back. If you've got a lot of established stuff that's already in there, or you have plants that are going to have the different watering requirements, then maybe if you're looking, is that being your main source of watering, don't go that route. But so sprinklers.
Vegetable garden.
Yeah, vegetable garden would be a good one.
That's what I primarily use a sprinkler for, is my vegetable garden. So I'll set it right where I want it. I like the one that goes back and forth, to and fro. Not because I think it does a better job, just because it's easy.
You don't like that one?
I like those, but you got to tinker and stuff with it. And I don't like to tinker. I just like to move those little things. What do you call those? Those little clicky things. Yeah. And I can see on the sprinkler where it's going to hit the what'd you call it?
something like that.
Yeah, that one just, I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, that looks complicated. So I like the back and forth to and fro ones, and I let that go on my vegetable garden until I start to see some puddling, and I know it's probably at capacity.
Yeah. So kind of in the same idea of the sprinklers would be like drip hoses or soaker hoses. There again, just be careful with understanding your plant's watering demands. Obviously, you don't want to use a soaker hose on something that wants dry soil, but if you've got a vegetable garden, or like we talked about, some newly planted annuals or something, maybe drip hoses or soaker hoses would be good.
So a soaker hose is essentially a hose that has a cap at the end so the water doesn't escape at the end, and then it just has a bunch of little micro holes punched into it, and it just slowly leaks into the soil. So another good thing about that is you're not getting the foliage all wet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's keeping the water into the soil, which is important. When you're watering, keeping water at your roots. The leaves don't want to be watered.
No,
it's the roots that want the water.
Too.
Yeah,
is people that don't understand that. Like when you get new people that have never watered before, maybe it be in the landscaping industry, like what we deal with, or like what I deal with in the garden center at the greenhouse on the weekends. A lot of times we get new people in, and it's like, do you know how to water? And it sounds like a stupid question to ask. And you always get, well, yeah, I know how to water. Okay, we'll go water this plant. And then you watch them, and it's just, they're just running the hose over the foliage because they think that's how the plant takes in its moisture, is through the foliage.
You're preaching to the choir on that one, Bub.
Some, there are plants that do that in this world, but not very many of them, and not the plants that we're talking about here.
I've worked with new employees at our job there in Dublin, and I've gone out to train on watering, and they water, and they just kind of flick the hose around, and it gets just the foliage wet and the mulch. And I have to say, you're going to want to hold the hose over this plant and count to 30.
Yeah.
And then move to the next plant and count to 30. And it's amazing. It's like how much more water that plant is getting the right way versus the way that they started watering.
Yeah, the conceived way of watering.
Yeah.
So many. So, yeah, and that, speaking of watering, how you just, the 30-second, I use that too. I mean, even still today, I've been watering plants since I was 16 years old. And I still time things, like maybe it's 5 seconds for this plant and 15 for that and 30 for that. I will still do that to try and be consistent from, plant to plant. That way everything's kind of getting the same amount of water. And I always use, like, my preferred method of watering is using wands and breakers. Watering one on the end of the hose, you could buy them any place. We use the Dram watering wands.
I do really like Dram. I mean, buy what you want, but if you want a good quality piece of equipment, a good Dram wand with a Dram breaker and what's the little trigger called that turns it on and off?
Just a shut-off valve?
Yeah.
Yeah, a Brad shut-off valve.
Technical.
I don't know how
with your terminology.
It's a shut-off valve.
I call it the trigger thing.
Trigger thing, shut-off valve, potato. But yeah, so my preferred method is the watering wand with a good breaker on the end of it, a Dram breaker.
The breaker is what takes the water, instead of sending it out in a big tubular mass, it breaks it into droplets.
Yeah, we don't want... We want volume of water, but not volume of water to where it's washing soil and washing mulch away. We want that water to be... we want it to, to be broken up.
We want it to mimic rain.
Yeah, mimic rain. So that's my preferred method. I feel like that's getting water to the root zone. I can put the the watering wand right down by the base of the plant and make sure that all of that water is getting to the root zone and around the root zone, like not just at the base of the plant, but all around it also, getting all of that soil moist. So as the roots begin to use up the moisture that's right there available to them, they will continue to kind of reach out in search of some of that other moisture, which helps get them
that's
established quicker.
That's a really important point. So if you just try to get water right into the plant's roots, that's great. But if the soil's real dry around that plant, the water is going to move out quickly to that dry soil. It's going to wick it right out.
Yeah.
So getting the moisture into the roots and around it, that way, once the roots use it up, there's still some available moisture for it to bring in. I'm using my hands a lot on this one.
I know.
I wish you could see this.
We need a video so you can see
the motion and the motion of the water moving into the plant's roots. But it's very scientific.
It's doing things. I feel the warm front.
Micro warm front. And I don't know where we're at with time right now, but I do want to talk about when to water, because we talked a little bit about how to water just then, but when to water is very important. I think this is another one of those misnomers. A lot of people say, well, my pappy said I should always water at night before bed, because I don't know why, because pappy said it. But that's actually not true. Watering, especially when you're using a sprinkler or some sort of overhead means, is best done as early in the day as possible. So it doesn't have to be early in the morning, especially like a lot of us, like you and I, we have to work. I can't set a sprinkler and then drive 25 minutes back home to shut it off when I leave for work. But when I get home from work in the mid-afternoon, I'll run it. And the reason being is we don't want water sitting on foliage, on the leaves, on the flowers, because when it comes to diseases, especially fungal diseases, which is a big one with plants, water is key for those diseases to multiply.
Water and heat.
And establish, correct. And if you're watering early in the day, that water is going to evaporate so fast off those plant leaves. I mean, just
as soon as the sun
snap your fingers, the water's gone. But at nighttime, it's a different story, and the water sits. And then you do that again and again and again, and the water keeps sitting. And then you start to have these mildew problems, right? And, I mean, the amount of fungal diseases are just off the charts. There's so many of them. And not a lot of it, it's water. Water is the problem with these diseases. And so not letting that water sit on the leaves is best. So as early in the day as you can do it is best when we're talking about watering.
Yeah. But don't think that if you can't get it until... If you can only water in the middle of the day or whatever, then please, by all means, do that.
And if you can only water right before dusk, that's fine. But if you do it day after day after day, and the water just builds up, and then the fungal spores keep multiplying, that's when you've got the problem. Yeah. So earlier in the day is best for watering, especially when it's an overhead method.
Yeah. And also, when to water, get asked this question a lot in the greenhouse, like, well, how often do I water this, or when do I water it? And it's always, it kind of depends on the plant. Understand the plant and its watering needs, whether that be a Google search or reaching out to somebody at the nursery or your local horticulturist or whoever to understand that plant's watering needs. But also, it's a lot of times as easy as just sticking your finger in the soil.
Yeah, get in there.
Stick your finger in the soil. If the soil's wet,
pull back the mulch and get it. And Matt says wet. Just to clarify, wet doesn't mean
soaking.
It just means, is there any moisture there, or is it just bone dry?
Yeah.
And that's just something over time you'll figure out with your moisture. But
same with containers and hanging baskets. Just stick your finger, knuckle deep right down in there.
Get in there
and see what it feels like. It also, I do the lift in the pot method, like on hanging baskets. You get them soaking wet, you feel how heavy they are. So for me, it's literally, I don't even have to stick my finger in there. I can just pick up on the bottom of the pot with my hand.
And I mean, you ain't no rookie.
I ain't no rookie,
no.
And I know, oh yeah, that feels, exceptionally light or much lighter than it should be. Probably time to water. And sometimes a lot of times the plants will tell you when they're thirsty. They'll wilt down. Wilting isn't always a bad thing. I'd rather see a plant maybe wilt down a little bit to get overwatered.
Yeah, so it got real close to the mic there. I was chewing on it. Exactly. If the plant never takes on a little wilt, then chances are you're probably overwatering it. So a little bit of wilt is okay.
Yeah.
It's just when you start to see crispy, that's
no bueno.
No bueno.
Yeah.
And so you can't really do this with a tomato plant or one new perennial you stick in the ground. But so for a tree, that's a big one, is how often do I water this tree? And I think what's important is to just, when you do water it, is to really water it deep. And it takes no effort, because the best way to water a tree, especially if you're not sure or if you're on a time budget, is just to put your hose on a trickle and just set the head of the hose right there by the trunk and just let it run.
Yep.
And I mean, you don't want to do that every day, but if you're doing that once a week and you're leaving that trickle on for, I mean, what would you say, like an hour?
Yeah.
Half an hour? It depends on what size tree, but if it's really just a little trickle, you can't really overdo it at that point.
Yeah.
Especially if,
trickle.
Yeah. Just a little drip, drop. Like that.
Yeah.
You gotta look at it and say drip, drop, and then you're probably good. You leave it for an hour. That's a nice soak.
Yeah. That's another very important takeaway on this is infrequent deep waterings on trees and shrubs are way better than frequent shallow waterings. A little bit of water every day is not going to do that plant any good. If you're hitting your trees, I mean, a couple times a week on a real deep watering when it's hot and dry is amazing for them,
Yeah, and if that tree is still thriving by the end of that season, the chance of it doing great the next season is just shoots through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Good stuff on the watering here. So what are just a quick Cliff Notes version of what we talked about today? You want to do that or you want me to, Timmy?
I'd say we to and fro it.
Okay, to and fro it. So quick Cliff Notes. I'm going to grab my notes here just to make sure that I'm getting all of this right. So 3 main things to watering. Veggie garden, watering, making sure your new veggie garden is watered, is wet. Newly planted tree, shrubs, perennials, and annuals. And making sure that your containers and your hanging baskets and stuff are watered good. That's probably going to be a little bit more frequent than everything else.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about veggies that much, but the reason it's so important to water your vegetable garden a lot is because what we're looking for in a vegetable garden is a big plump something, right? A big plump tomato, potato, a pod full of peas, a carrot. Those things are primarily made of water. So even if your plants don't look sad or wilted or they're doing okay, getting those things water is so important because what's the outcome?
You want that plump fruit.
You want that plump fruit.
I want a plump one.
It in order to have water, in order to have big, juicy tomatoes, they need to be taking up water.
Yes.
Moisture. You have to.
Yep.
So I digress.
Thank you.
Do I?
Thank you for that. So we went over the three main things. Tim touched more on the vegetables. Irrigation and landscape, generally pointless. Plants, the watering needs of plants are so different from one plant to the next. Pretty costly up front, to get that irrigation installed.
And running it every day is costly throughout.
Running it if you're on city water, it's crazy expensive. Means of watering: sprinklers, drip hoses, soaker hoses. Our personal favorite, using watering wands with the breaker on the end. Also, if you're able to collect rainwater, using rainwater through like a rain barrel off of your gutter or your roof or whatever. What else do we got, Tim? Using a rain gauge or the All-Weather Network app to check rain amounts at your house, or at least locally to where you are. That AWN app's great. It'll get you close.
Yeah, and watering as early in the day as you can, and just really getting the water into the root zones. So there are instances where hitting the leaves with the stream of water is good for the plant, but we're not getting to that day. You want to get that water into that soil around those roots. That's where the water uptake is going to happen.
Perfect.
So,
is that it then?
Yeah.
We got on water. Yeah. So I guess,
till next time.
Till next time, if you got any questions about watering or anything we talked about, reach out to us.
Yeah. So last week we wanted some questions, some things we could answer right here, over the old radio.
And we didn't get any.
We didn't get any questions.
So please ask us questions.
Yeah. Ask us questions. Keep them wet. That's my advice for the week.
Keep them moist.
Keep them wet.
I think you wanted to do this podcast just so you could say wet and moist a whole bunch. Am I wrong?
No, there's a little accuracy there, but I also want people to keep a healthy garden full of plants.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very important topic.
It is. It's a science,
especially moving into summer here. So I'm glad we covered it, Tim. But
yeah, and also my unpopular opinion is summer is my least favorite season.
It's not that unpopular, at least
not with you, but with a lot of people. They're like, it's just like pool noodles and cookouts, and give me spring and fall all day long. And we're still in spring, but it feels like summer right now. Oh yeah, I'll take winter's third, but it's before summer. I mean, you can find me in the AC.
That's right. So, all right. Well, until next time, everybody, thanks for listening. Tim, always a pleasure. So, yeah.
It's always a pleasure. Keep them wet, and we love you.
All right. Love you harder.
They don't.
Bye-bye.
Bye.